Hey everyone, this is Jason from EskimoTV.net, and today I'm going to be talking about Spider-Man No Way Home, and this will be my spoiler talk review video. And so in this video, I'm going to be going over all of the major plot details of Spider-Man No Way Home. If you have not seen the previous Spider-Man films, I don't think you must watch them, but this is definitely a way nicer experience if you have. There's a good recap video that I watched just to remind myself of the films, and I'll leave a link to that summary video that I watched by a really great YouTuber in the description below. I did watch the three Tobey Maguire films before going into this. Those are my favorite. Those are the ones I grew up with, and Spider-Man 2 is one of the best superhero movies of all time. I'm going to give a quick disclaimer. I've only seen this film once, and so I'm going to be going over a lot of plot points. If I get something inaccurate, or I don't know the name of something, or I pronounce something wrong, feel free to correct me, but I'll go ahead and let you know right now. I may not be on point with every single exact thing, but I'm going to do my best. I took a bunch of notes at the press screening, and so I'm going to break down the plot and go through some of the major key points in the story, let you know if I had some thoughts on it. If you have not seen the film and you do not want to have the film be spoiled for you, then I would click off this video, because I'm gonna dive right into it, and I want to know your thoughts. For those of y'all that have seen it, what did you think about some of the major crazy things that happened in this movie? Jump right in the comments and let me know, and let's go ahead and get started with this video. In the previous film, we were left on a big cliffhanger. Peter's identity is not only revealed, but he's also declared to be a menace to society. And I thought that that had a lot of good content that could be explored. It reminded me, totally different genre, but Richard Jewell, someone that was accused of something he did not do, but in a superhero way. And in this movie, what happens is Peter's very quickly acquitted of all the charges. They say that there's not enough evidence, and I guess you didn't do it. I thought that this beginning part of the film was a little weak because it made the events from the last film feel a little bit inconsequential. We've been waiting for this film since Far From Home, and we're led to believe that a big part of this film is people hating on Peter and people thinking, oh no, look at the bad things he's done. And it's just kind of wrapped up nicely at the beginning. Instead, what happens is people just become obsessed with him. He's now the celebrity of the school. There's a showcase thing at school that says where we shape heroes, and it has just a bunch of Spider-Man type memorabilia inside of it. And it just shifts tones rather quickly, people going from hating him to loving him. And I get it, it's a superhero film, anything can happen, but I think that it could have been played a little bit more of a serious, darker tone, and they still could have done the same plot, is the thing that I'm thinking, if they made it to where people hated him. Because what happens after Peter's getting all this attention is he goes to Doctor Strange, and he wants Doctor Strange to erase the memory that people know that he's Spider-Man. Well, I would think that he could go to Doctor Strange with that request if people are hating him. And I think that they could have really made that point a little bit stronger, and I think it would have given, I would have been more sold out to Peter wanting to reach out if people were just out to get him and people thought he was a menace. And that's really relatable. If someone thought wrong of me for something I didn't do, I would wish that that could be undone, especially if a news story was run about something I didn't do. But instead, they just play it off differently. Peter doesn't like the attention he's getting. Not the best start to the film. But that's one of the only problems I had. Once you get over it though, and the further conflict comes into the story, you kind of get over that rather quickly. After Doctor Strange sets off a spell, previous villains from the past Spider-Man films enter into this world, causing havoc. Doctor Strange plans to annihilate them all. Peter captures them, puts them into these pods that Doctor Strange has located at his base, and he says we have to send them back to the dimensions they came from, and consequently they will cease to exist. And Peter Parker, Spider-Man, decides to not let Doctor Strange go through with that. There's a really cool sequence where they enter what's called the mirror dimension, which was one of my favorite action sequences. It was the most beautiful and stunning for sure. Whoever worked on the CGI and the geometry effects on all of that, did a phenomenal job. I really enjoyed it. It looked beautiful. And that's coming from someone with a graphic design, video editing background. I thought that was an outstanding job. Peter prevents Doctor Strange from enacting his plan to send these guys back to where they came from. They're still evil though, and instead of killing them, Peter wants to figure out why they are the way that they are and try to change them back because he starts to learn things about them. For example, if you have not seen Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock, the chip that was supposed to prevent him from losing control of the arms that he had, broke. And so the solution was, let's just fix it so that way this dude can get control of his own actions. Green Goblin was injected with this serum that makes him have a split personality. He's very Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One day he's good, the next day Green Goblin persona is trying to convince him to do something bad. Peter tries to figure out a way to reverse that. Peter Parker successfully fixes Doc Ock. Doc Ock thanks him and attempts to move forward with the other villains. Unfortunately, the worst of Green Goblin comes out, convinces the other evil characters to team up, and they overthrow Spider-Man. And one of the saddest things that happens in this film is Aunt May passing away. Green Goblin throws a explosion thing and she gets hurt by it, and it looks like she's gonna survive for a moment, but instead she gives Peter the "with great power comes great responsibility" speech that Uncle Ben gave the other Spider-Man, and she delivers it so well, and it felt unique to her character, and I found this scene to be quite emotional. One of the, if not most emotional scene in the film. You really feel the effect and the consequence that it has on Peter's character, because he could have let Doctor Strange send these characters back to not existing in their other dimensions, but he was trying to do something good. And this raises the question that I think is a serious theme. Should we let bad people have second chances? Should we enact death penalty? Or should we just lock them up for a certain amount of time and then let them back out and hope they learned their lesson? That's sort of a theme that you can think about when you watch this movie. I think Peter handled the situation rather poorly. He was trying to do something good, but I think maybe because, especially with Green Goblin, who has a split personality and could have just attacked them at any moment, he should have kept them in a kidnapped space until he was finished with the serum. Even though he wasn't acting evil, you never know if he's going to turn that way at any point in time. So it would have been smarter to keep him in an enclosed area until you have the solution for all of them. If you're not going to go through with Doctor Strange's more simplistic and effective quick plan to just rid all of these characters that have done pretty vile things that you could make an argument for definitely deserve to not exist. I'm going to talk about probably the biggest spoiler of the year. I'm sure you know what's coming, what I'm going to talk about in this next section, but just yet another spoiler warning to get you to click off if you don't want to know anything about this film. But what happens after this point is MJ and Ned are waiting for Spider-Man, and they have a ring thing that Doctor Strange has, and they're trying to call on Peter Parker to see where he's at. Well, they don't call on the Peter Parker from this MCU universe, but instead we are first greeted with Andrew Garfield, who plays another Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and he's really great in this movie. Slowly after this event, we see Tobey Maguire come into the same scene when they once again are trying to find our Peter Parker. They eventually find Peter. All three of the Spider-Man people meet up. I don't know if you say Spider-Men or Spider-Mans, but they all meet up, and it's rather nice to see them interact. It's a little awkward to see these Spider-Man characters way older than they were, specifically Tobey Maguire, reprise his role. and he's a lot older, but once you see them interacting, they have good rapport with one another. Tobey Maguire initially does not come as Spider-Man. I like a line that Andrew Garfield says, "Are you gonna come in your Spidey suit, or are you gonna come dressed as a cool youth pastor?" Growing up in church, it made me laugh. He had the glasses, he had the look of a youth pastor. I thought that was rather funny. When they're hanging out at another area, they're bonding more. Once again, having good rapport with one another. And I thought that was one of the things that the film did rather well. Instead of just having these characters fight, there are good moments of dialogue exchange where they get to know one another. One of the things that Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man want to know about Tobey's is how it is to have Spidey web already inside of you to where you don't have to create web fluid, and he's kind of a little amused by this but doesn't know how to respond. It somewhat felt like a little child asking about the birds and the bees. Like, it was kind of awkward for him to talk about, and the icing on the cake is when Tom Holland's character says, "So does it only come out of your wrist, or does it come out of other places?" That in a press screening got a good laugh from the audience. I want to talk about John Campea for a minute. He leaked a photo that was in the movie, and I feel really bad for this guy because this is a guy that does not like spoilers. I don't hold anything negative against John because he, I believe, sincerely thought that this was just a photoshopped photo, but is in fact a real photo. And what is hilarious about this is that he always professes to hate leaks and spoilers, and probably was one of the biggest influencers that spoiled the biggest movie of the year. So hopefully you did not see that photo that he posted. It was really popular over Twitter, but I just wanted to mention that now that we've kind of got out of the way that the 3 Spider-Man are in this film. Hopefully he'll be a little bit more careful in the future about what he shares and what he posts when he gets pictures that he thinks are photoshopped. After the 3 Spider-Man have a good bonding moment, they go on a big face-off at the monumental Statue of Liberty. Spider-Man puts a stop to Sandman. It's actually Doc Ock who's able to put a stop to Electro. The Green Goblin comes at these characters, and there's a really cool scene where MJ is falling, similar to how Gwen Stacy fell in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Tom Holland misses her. But Andrew Garfield has a redeeming moment where he gets to save her where he wasn't to save Gwen Stacy. And that was a moment that, if you've seen the past films, if you're connected to those films at all, made you feel something that you would not have felt if you had not seen those movies. There's a big altercation between Tom Holland's Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. Obviously, Tom Holland is furious that the Green Goblin was the catalyst for Aunt May's death, and so he is doing his worst to try and eliminate this character, but it is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man that puts a stop to him delivering the final blow, reminding him that everyone deserves a second chance. Green Goblin attacks Peter Parker. There is a lot of back and forth fighting. Andrew Garfield throws Tom Holland's Spider-Man the serum, injects it into Green Goblin, and he finally returns back to normal. I want to give a shout out to Willem Dafoe, who did such a great performance with a character that's super zany and could have came off as extremely laughable if it wasn't controlled by such a well-talented actor. The end of the film has Peter Parker telling Doctor Strange to go ahead and enact the original spell that he had in mind. As more characters from other places start coming out from the sky, the world is going crazy. Peter Parker does not want this to happen, and so he just says to go ahead and go through with it, and he'll find MJ and Ned. There's a very sweet sentimental moment between the trio, and the world forgets about Peter Parker being Spider-Man. The world forgets about Peter Parker in general. It is so sad. Peter Parker goes to a coffee shop. MJ doesn't recognize him. Peter is preparing a script to try to remind them of who he is, but he sees that they're happy in MIT, in college, doing great things, and doesn't want to ruin that. Happy doesn't know who Peter Parker is. He just knows of Spider-Man, and Peter decides not to tell them. He ends the movie with flying throughout the city, and I think is making a decision to anonymously be a superhero that saves the world and doesn't want to get anyone involved. Peter Parker is such an admirable character. Tom Holland portrays him extremely well, and now that no one knows of his identity, not a single soul, I'm curious to see how he handles the next few films. Stay for the end credits. Venom is coming back. Tom Hardy is talking to a bartender who is talking about superhero stuff, and when he leaves, there's a little bit of black stuff on the table. Wonder who's gonna be Venom, who's gonna turn into Venom in the world, but Venom is definitely gonna be a big part moving forward. There is not technically a second end credit scene, but there is the trailer to Doctor Strange, the upcoming multiverse film that he's starring in, and that trailer was really cool. It seems to be almost a sequel to this and deals with the consequences of Doctor Strange enacting this spell. And so make sure you stay tuned for both end credit scenes if you care to catch that. This was my spoiler talk of Spider-Man No Way Home. I thought that this film was wonderful, it was epic, it was a large scale that could have been extremely convoluted, but instead was a nice coherent story that added depth to previous installments, had amazing cinematography, action, and is the definition of a Hollywood blockbuster film in 2021, the best superhero film of the year. I'm gonna give Spider-Man No Way Home an A-. I hope you all enjoyed my review of Spider-Man No Way Home. If you did, smash that like button. You can also consider subscribing to the channel. You can also check out my website, EskimoTV.net, for movie reviews, vinyl unboxings, and more by myself as well as other authors. Hope you all enjoyed this. Once again, my name is Jason Escamilla from EskimoTV.net.